to many conservative Christian scholars as well, like C.S. Lewis. In simple terms, yes, it would appear Tolkien leaned more conservative, some would even say reactionary. But if you read more of his writings and want to apply modern-day terminology, it is more accurate to say Tolkien was a card-carrying resident of Ancapistan, and not the kind of anarchist who smokes weed and pretends to be part of Antifa, the kind who thinks Pinochet did nothing wrong, the kind of person who would throw woke Amazon employees out of a helicopter for saying tax the rich is a good idea. You may very well think I'm exaggerating, or joking at this point, but the only thing I am guilty of is perhaps putting too much emphasis on one letter of his, but it remains a very real letter. A letter in which Tolkien explained how he literally wanted enforced anti-statism. My political opinions lean more and more to anarchy, philosophically understood, meaning abolition of control, not whiskered men with bombs, or to unconstitutional monarchy. I would arrest anybody who uses the word state, in any sense, other than the inanimate realm of England and its inhabitants, a thing that has neither power, rights, nor mind, and after a chance of recantation, execute them if they remain obstinate. I want to leave room here to say Tolkien was being cheeky, hyperbolic, perhaps, by suggesting execution as a way to enforce the non-aggression principle, but regardless, his hatred of the government is a very consistent theme in all of his letters. The proper study of man is anything but man, and the most improper job of any man, even saints who at any rate were at least unwilling to take it on, is bossing other men. Not one in a million is fit for it, and least of all, those who seek the opportunity. From here he goes on a long rant about how everyone sucks, from medieval kings to ancient Greece, even calling Alexander the Great a boob, and then just full-on flies into this. But the special horror of the present world is that the whole damned thing is in one bag. There is nowhere to fly to. Even the unlucky little Samoyeds, I suspect, have tinned food and the village loudspeaker telling Stalin's bedtime stories about democracy and the wicked fascists who eat babies and steal sledge dogs. There is only one bright spot, and that is the growing habit of disgruntled men of dynamiting factories and power stations. I hope that, encouraged now as patriotism, may remain a habit, but it won't do any good if it is not universal. Bruh, yes. He just said, the one upside to the world is when men bomb factories and power stations, and how that should remain a habit and be more universal, to stop the state from expanding. In other words, J.R.R. Tolkien would be looking at today's Canadian truckers and wondering why, instead of just sitting around honking, they weren't scouring the Shire of Justin Trudeau, or as Tolkien probably would have called him, Sauron the anti-white. No, seriously, look at this letter where Tolkien gives his thoughts on socialism. I am not a socialist in any sense, being averse to planning, as must be plain, most of all because the planners, when they acquire power, become so bad, but I would not say that we had to suffer the malice of Sharkey and his ruffians here, though the spirit of Isengard, if not Mordor, is of course always cropping up. The present design of destroying Oxford in order to accommodate motor cars is a case, but our chief adversary is a member of a Tory government, but you could apply it anywhere these days. Firstly, if you don't know who Sharkey is, that's what Sauron called himself when he took over the Shire. Yes, this happens in the books, and they cut it from the movies. And Sauron is literally who Tolkien uses to describe his political enemies. And apparently, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on, socialist, Tory, whatever, if you're in government, you're all Uruk-hai to Professor Tolkien. But for some, even Uruk-hai was too good. If you're a communist, you're just a straight-up orc. Here's another letter. There is no symbolism or conscious allegory in my story. Allegory of the sort, 5 wizards equals 5 senses, is wholly foreign to my way of thinking. There were 5 wizards, and that is just a unique part of history. To ask if the orcs are communists is to me as sensible as asking if communists are orcs. That there is no allegory does not, of course, say there is no applicability. In other words, just because I didn't think of it at the time doesn't mean it's not true. And before you go jumping down my throat and saying, well, that means Tolkien could have written a series that involves transgenderism and queerness and all the rest of it, but just not thought of it at the time, just like these communist orcs. Well, let's talk about his views.